We're here to make a new type of news.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Making news just for you. It's August 7th here in Seoul. I'm Shin Yeun, and this is News Generation, where we make the news at Arirang's very own open studio. Every morning, we'll discuss the top issues and latest current affairs affecting people in their 20s and 30s. Joining me in the studio is Kim Xiang.
Happy Monday, Yeun.
Happy Monday, and Choi Ji-hee.
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. Now, both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. As usual, let's start with our news feed, which covers different hashtags and news items that have been trending on social media over the past 24 hours. Last week, 40,000 young people from around the world arrived in Puan County, Jeollabuk-do Province to attend the World Scout Jamboree. But after many of them fell ill from a record heat wave and what attendees called poor quality food and facilities, some countries have called their scouts to come back home. The US and UK teams took their participants to nearby hotels and army bases. Though the World Organization of the Scout Movement has asked the Korean Scout Association to end the event early, Korean organizers haven't canceled it yet. If it continues, the event will last till August 12th. Meanwhile, President Yoon has allocated $5.3 million to provide unlimited air-conditioned buses and personnel. Moving on, last Thursday, a man in his 20s went on a stabbing rampage near a department store in Bundang, Gyeonggi-do Province. The police announced on Sunday that one of the 14 wounded, a woman in her 60s, has died from her wounds. The suspect, a 22-year-old identified by his surname Che, will now formally be charged with murder. And what happened in Bundang wasn't the first of its kind. Just a week before, we saw a similar stabbing rampage in Seoul where the culprit had no specific motive. Since then, we've seen people post similar murder threats online, sparking concern that we may see copycat crimes. Police on Sunday said they've tracked down 54 people who seem to be connected to these posts, and authorities identified a few of them as minors. And as much as many Koreans are on their toes fearing similar cases, authorities have taken swift action. The presidential office has decided to dispatch police to areas where people warned they would go attack people with a knife. As of Sunday, the list had 89 locations around the country. Police have also been stopping people who were seemingly to carry a weapon. And as of Sunday, they screened 442 people and they arrested 14 on a range of charges. Now, Chi-hee, were you one of the many, including myself, I was very scared. Were you one of the many scared to not even try to leave the house over the weekend?
I was really scared as well, and I was really worried about the people, my friends and acquaintances who live in some of these areas that were mentioned. And I also received text messages from my families and friends as well. And in regards to why I think people upload warnings like these is because people who are dissatisfied with their life, they really want to make an influence or exert influence on the public in a distorted way, and they're really trying to seek attention from them in this distorted way, really. And I think it's just really unhealthy, and we usually call them like keyboard warriors, people who are hidden behind anonymity, and they're just trying to control others. If people have that sense of fear because of these warnings, they feel as though they have exerted influence on them.
As if they have, ironically, this some sort of power, whether that be positive or negative influence. The fact that they can make people so scared, it's very twisted, as you mentioned. And Xiong, I actually tried staying home the whole weekend because I was very scared. But yesterday I had to go out to Gangnam for a while to run an errand, and I was so scared because it was one of the locations of the list where people warned they would be going on a stabbing rampage. But I did feel a bit relieved once I saw some police officers out on duty. And do you think that the Korean government's efforts to prevent these terror attacks by dispatching police officers is actually proven to be effective? And do you think it's enough? And also, I think we should keep in mind that these motiveless crimes are targeting not only females, but also males.
Oh yeah, the general population.
Yeah, the general public. And so I'm wondering, did you buy any self-defense weapons to try to, react towards these motiveless crimes?
I mean, first of all, you asked me a whole range of questions.
Yes.
I mean, first of all, I don't think it doesn't quite make sense to expect the government and the police to be able to predict and prevent these single-person organized random public attacks. 54 suspects who've acted on and posted a murder threat online have been arrested as of 6 p.m. yesterday. There are talks among the authorities to punish the culprits of the recent stabbing incidents with life sentence without any parole as well. South Korea is still one of the safest countries in the world with murder, homicide rate scoring around 0.6 people per
Right.
100,000 population annually. And given Korea's population of around 50 million, that is on average only about 30 people lost to intentional murder per year in Korea. So Korea ranks with Norway, Switzerland, Japan and Singapore, countries with the lowest crime, especially homicide rates in the world. As reported, the suspects did suffer from a fit of sort of collective delusions and paranoia, as well as Ji-hee rightfully mentioned. They are rather social misfits. They're quite unhappy with their life. As you can see in Korean local news reports, there's been a record of what their life was like, some failures here and there, and they've been frustrated. I think that's why you see a lot of these copycat crimes taking place. Quite a number of them were almost like jokes that they posted online.
Or like a challenge.
Yeah,
or like
like
a
a trend.
challenge.
Yeah.
Even this morning I saw news reports, citing taking screenshots. I saw the reports where they would have start the sentence or the title of a post seemingly like a murder prediction type of thing,
Right.
where we saw the real cases, and it turned out to be free hugs at Gangnam Station. And it turns out to be, Shinnim Station at this hour.
It's nothing
what's
to
gonna
joke
happen.
about at the moment,
No.
though.
It's nothing to joke about. And to be honest, I did want to buy a pepper spray. I think that would be the most efficient in knife attacks as well. First of all, if knife attacks, you got to run away. There's no, you can't really fight it. My concern also here is that the overgeneralization of this might lead to the police and the government sort of censoring the online space more and tracking down potential, they might say, suspects or future suspects, and that might be really censoring the space of free speech and things like that, which is a concern as well.
But at the moment, I think the most urgent issue is safety and trying to tame down the general public's fear of potential terror attacks that we may be seeing. Hopefully we don't. And that was our news feed for this Monday. Let's head straight into our discussion topic now. Are you in a relationship? If not, you're not alone. There's actually a growing number of millennials and Gen Z in Korea who are choosing to never date. Take a look at the screen to find out more. If you've never been in a relationship before, in Korea, people might call you 모솔. It's short for 모태솔로, which means that you've been single for your whole life since birth. And it definitely hasn't been easy for 모솔 to live with this title, where being in a relationship is considered the norm. There's this social atmosphere of parents or elderly people asking their children who they're meeting with these days or when they're going to start dating. But recently, we've seen a change in Korea's vibrant dating life. Last year, the Korea Population and Health Welfare Association surveyed more than 1,000 young adults aged 19 to 34. 3 out of 10 had never been in a romantic relationship before. And 65% of the others said they weren't romantically involved at the moment. This mainly had to do with living costs and the economic burden of dating. Single since birth, which is known as 모솔 in Korean. As we just saw, there are so many people who've never been in a romantic relationship. And before we look into the reasons why a growing number of young people are like this, let's first find out just how many of the younger generation in Korea are 모솔. Xiang.
So the younger generation, in other words, millennials and Gen Zs, are the most sexually and romantically active population, as you'd expect. And even so, it seems like less and less are committing to a relationship. Let's have a look at what the situation looks like in South Korea. Percentage-wise, a survey done by Korea Population, Health and Welfare Association in 2022 on a sample of 1,047 unmarried males and females aged between 19 and 34 suggests that 29.1%, or 3 in 10 millennials and Gen Zs, have never been in a relationship. This figure is similar with the youths in the US, where a survey by research company YPulse showed that 29% of Gen Zs in America have never been in a relationship, whereas only 5% of millennials have never been in a relationship in the US. So, I think the situation might be sort of inherently different in Korea and the US, though, as any sexual relationship in South Korea culturally demands for a couple to be in a committed relationship. So unlike the rest of the world population, it is likely that Koreans who've never been in a relationship might have actually never had a romantic encounter at all.
Right. Traditionally, that's what we consider to be Musor, right? But Ji, what do you think? Do you think our growing number of millennials and Gen Z in Korea are this so-called Musor?
Well, other than the statistics that Shiyoung just introduced, I feel that Musor has become a lot more common in Korean society because if you take a look at a lot of the dating programs that are really popular here in the country, they deal with the stories of Musors or they feature them as well. And the overall perception towards these people has changed too. In the past, it would have been a little more negative, thinking that there was something wrong with them. And they themselves were less confident about revealing that they've never dated in their life before because it may mean that they have some social skill problems or personality issues or whatever. But it's not like that these days.
It's not.
Exactly. Other than these personal and internal reasons, there are a lot of social and external reasons that explain it.
And the global trend nowadays, it's really not a lot of millennials and Gen Z, I think, are defining their relationship as clean cut as our previous generation did. Here in Korea, there's this culture of saying, hey, we're dating from today, it's day one.
Right.
But I don't think
doing that here.
Yeah, they love doing that here in Korea. That's why there's so many anniversaries and stuff like that. But I think from our generation and henceforth, we'll be seeing loose, like we don't need to really define the relationship. And that's why most of the perceptions have changed.
Going spiritually.
Exactly. But now I would like to analyze the reasons why millennials and Gen Z are choosing not to date or couldn't date, whether that's since birth or from now on. And we're going to do an OX quiz.
Yay.
I have a few questions for you guys, so if you can take out your OX signs.
All right.
All right, so let's look at the first reason as to why our generation, a lot of people here are choosing not to date. Could it be from any economic burdens? You know, you might feel economically too difficult to be paying for a date or going out on dates. Do you guys think that's a legit reason?
No.
No and
Yes.
yes. Okay, wait, I want to hear from you first, Xiao.
Well, I mean, economic reasons shouldn't be a barrier to a romantic relationship. You know, all in all, it doesn't make sense because you can't afford it, you can't be romantic. That doesn't make sense. I mean, if your partner demands a certain level of gold, let's say, certain amount of presents and fancy dates and things like that, it costs a lot, you can't cover that cost, then too bad, you know, that might not work out. But in my honest opinion, even just going for strolls in a park, if you can't afford to do anything, you can just go on a nice free exhibitions or, you know.
But eventually you would have to eat something.
Yeah, I mean, if you really can't afford to eat anything, I don't think you're in the right mindset to be actively looking, of course, as you know. But it shouldn't be a burden.
It shouldn't be a burden, but I think it's a very legitimate reason why young people in Korea, at least, don't choose to date because reality is just too hard for them.
Yeah, living costs are just too high.
Exactly. Living costs are high, and some people, they're just looking for jobs, and sometimes they just have to live off eating like cheap kimbap.
Yeah, go to the
But you could go have the kimbap together.
You can,
That's
but
true.
Do you have to impress this person
no,
all
times? It's not about impressing, but I feel like they just don't have that kind of capacity to, you know, be in a relationship when they're not satisfied with themselves.
Yeah, it's understandable.
Right?
Now, the second reason I'd like to ask is maybe you're too busy spending quality alone time, whether that be enjoying your hobbies or meeting friends. Your answers to that?
Okay,
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
That's a legitimate reason? Okay, what yet again?
It is a legitimate reason because everything has its own timing, right? Your friends might, when you grow old, your friends might leave you, not leave you per se, but you know, they might move on to the next chapters of their life. They might have kids, they might have their own families, they might not have time to spend with you. And that, I think, that is a legit reason to, if you have a group of friends that you love so much, you love spending time with, and hobbies that you want to commit to, I think it's a legitimate reason. I think it's a good reason to put off the dating scene for a little longer.
Because you want to spend individual time.
Exactly,
work
develop
on
yourself a little, and then, you know, be free to do whatever you want.
Yeah, I agree, but I said no because I feel like you can do all these things when you're in a relationship as well. And if you're really busy and having fun spending quality time alone, engaging in your hobbies and other activities, but you have that opportunity to meet the person of your life, then you know, you won't just say, okay, I don't want to meet you because I have these quality
you would
activities.
want to do it together.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think it really comes down to whether you meet the love of your life.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was about to say. If it's going to be the love of your life,
how
of
do you
course
know?
everybody's going to do that.
I know, and how do you know whether you met the love of your life? Now, okay, I would like to analyze further reasons after our Skype interview. Until then, let's also look at what our global viewers had to say as to what are the reasons behind singles are deciding to stay single, whether that's from birth. If you take a look at the screen, you can find out what 3 of our viewers had to say based on today's discussion topic. So we asked whether what they thought are the reasons are for people to stay single. And Will Meaden said they want to be single, being married isn't for everyone. Sean Gooley said, I know that for myself and a lot of friends, we don't have the money for ourselves, let alone a partner. Women want to be looked after and provided for, and when you don't have a house, a car, or a job, it's very hard to find a woman to be with and marry. SGR said the mindset of someone who never dates is, if I can't date someone who looks exactly like the models I see on Instagram, then I don't want to date anyone at all. All right, and to add more depth into our topic of the day, we're going to include a social researcher, and let's hear how she analyzes this social phenomenon. To find out whether this trend of never dating anyone is a norm only in Korea, let's include a social researcher in our tops. It's Paek Ji-sun from the University of St. Andrews. Great to have you back on our show, Ji-sun.
Thank you so much. Great to be here today.
All right, Ji-sun, so I'd like to ask you the first question. Do you think this type of dating phenomenon is only confined to Korea, this so-called Wosor culture?
I thought this trend was quite interesting because Korean culture naturally reinforces dating. Like, look at K-drama. It's all about love and romance. Koreans naturally want romantic relationships. However, these days, young Koreans are increasingly avoiding dating because there are even trending Korean terms that reflect this. For example, there are words such as 비연애, 비혼, and 비출산, indicating no marriage, no childbirth. No marriage, no childbirth. As far as I'm concerned, there isn't a similar concept in English. This unique trend seems to be specific to Korea.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, definitely seems to be unique to Korea. I think Korea has a different sort of dating culture as well, where it has to be a relationship before you move on to any sort of, physical touch, even holding hands. You've got to be confirmed to be in a relationship. And that's quite interesting. But as a social researcher, apart from the reasons both us on the show and our viewers mentioned, what do you think stops or limits young people from dating these days?
I believe there are several unique reasons specific to Korea. Firstly, there is social pressure surrounding marriage. If you're in your late 20s or 30s and in a relationship, there is a strong expectation to marry your partner and start a family. This traditional expectation often stops people from pursuing relationships. Another factor is that we're not happy enough. Our lives are so busy, we find ourselves burdened with numerous concerns, like Shi-young and Ji-hee pointed out. These factors play a role in why many young people are hesitant to date.
Well, my last question to you is, Ji-sun, do you think this is something to worry about, and the fact that people just aren't dating? And what do you think needs to be done about this?
That's a very interesting question. I think we do need to worry about this trend because, in my perspective, young people in Korea are almost forced to not to be in a relationship. Korea is not an optimal environment for people to raise their children or even engage in dating at the moment. However, the government frequently focuses on the low birth rate rather than our overall quality of life. So I believe if Korean society becomes a more appealing environment for living and raising children, it will naturally motivate people to be more open to be in a relationship.
Right, the socio-economic atmosphere has to be built first in order for people to actually engage or even think about being in a relationship. That's a very good point. Thank you so much, Ji-sun. It was a pleasure to have you here on our show today.
Thank you, Ji-sun.
Thank you.
And as Jisung mentioned, and as we mentioned here in the studio, there's so many reasons why people choose to stay single. But what we couldn't mention before is COVID-19.
Yes.
Some
Right.
people might feel like it's too scary to meet someone, especially with motiveless crimes rampaging our
also,
society.
domestic violence is
It's a very big
well.
intimate partner violence.
No opportunity to
No
because
opportunity.
of social distancing.
But then, as you asked Jisun, do you think we need to be concerned that more people from our generation are choosing not to date? And if that's not the case, how should society and our perspectives towards dating change?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really depends on which countries you look at. I think Korea specifically, because we're talking about Korea. In my honest opinion, and also Jisun mentioned, she got really passionate at the end where she talked about the government's effort in promoting relationships and marriage and childbirth and things like that. But they should actually be improving on the social standards, living conditions, quality of life and things like that. But that is, to be honest, something that the government can't really do. You know, I think at the bottom of the reason why we have such difficulties and Korean youngsters having difficulties dating is because, well, the social stigma, the cultural sort of senses of having sort of superficial objectives and things like that. You know, a lot of the times you have the expectations, you got to buy a home if you're a guy. For marriage, you got to have a house, you got to have a car, and have a decent job, and all of these things sort of create a division between your expectations of a relationship, a romantic relationship, and the reality. And even though it might be overgeneralization to think, oh, everybody's superficial, it becomes a burden when you first encounter and try to be in a romantic relationship.
And Chi, what do you think about this
Well,
question?
I feel like we shouldn't have a stigma towards those who have never dated before, but I really wish that the young people, younger generation, they feel more happy about themselves and their lives and really learn to feel and know that being in a relationship could be a happy thing, you know?
It could be.
Yeah, so I just want to encourage them, and I want the government and the country to make the environment more favorable for that to happen.
I think the most important thing for the Mosors here in Korea as well as other countries is to be comfortable in your own skin.
That's so true.
To have confidence. You know, ladies love confidence. So, you know, if you don't think you have anything good in you,
you know
just
what?
be
This is
confident.
very cliche, but love yourself. If you love yourself, you can love others. All right, and we'll be here every day from 9:30 to 10 a.m. Korea time, bringing you more topics young people are talking about. Special thanks to Kim Seong
My pleasure.
and Choi Ji-hee.
Always my pleasure.
All right, and thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. We are
News Generation.